He's in. It is just a little after 4. Our study session ran a little long today. If I could get a roll call, please.
Mayor Householder?
Here.
Commissioner Blanchard?
Here.
Commissioner Crawford?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Hardy?
Here.
At this time, all who are able, if you would please join me in a salute to our flag and a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Move on to awards and proclamations.
Item 3.1, the month of October 2014 as National Community Planning Month in the City of Salina. Jerry Boxa, Planning Commission Chairman, will read the proclamation.
Okay, Mr. Boxa.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jerry Boxa. I'm serving as Chair of the Planning Commission this upcoming year. And with your permission, I'd like to read this proclamation designating October as Community Planning Month.
Please.
All right, thank you. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Heritage Commission, and the Lee District Design Review Board, and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Salina. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional community planners of the city of Salina and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now therefore, be it resolved that the month of October 2014 be hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the City of Salina, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month.
Great. Do you have some events planned at all?
We do have several things coming up in October. Thanks to your willingness to provide some registration fees, we now have 6 planners who are going to attend a planning conference in Wichita on October the 2nd and 3rd, and we really appreciate that opportunity to hear about and share some of our stories as well as other things that are going on across the state. Also, we have a couple of study sessions planned for October 7th and the 21st prior to our meetings, and on October 21st we also have the annual Planning Commission Tree Advisory Board Landscape Awards. And if you've been around the city of Salina, it's going to be a tough decision this year. I don't know if the weather was just right or what, but there are lots of really nice landscaping going on. Couple things that we still need some help with. The Planning Commission needs 2 additional members still in order to have a full slate. And the Zoning Appeals Board, I think, needs 4 additional members. So if you know people in your community who want to have an opportunity to get involved and give a couple hours a month, let them know.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, I think we got a big stack of them down there, so hopefully we can find some good ones in there.
Thank you.
Great. I've got your signed proclamation here. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Item 3.2, the month of September 2014 as Life Insurance Awareness Month in the City of Salina. Bob Hammond, President of Heartland National Associations of Insurance and Financial Advisors, will read the proclamation.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Commission. We appreciate your willingness to serve on the public's behalf, and I appreciate you hearing this proclamation. We're a little late because early in the month we attended the national conference of NAFA, National Association for Insurance and Financial Advisors, and so didn't get in here a little later in the month. The proclamation reads, whereas the vast majority of Americans recognize that life insurance helps safeguard their families' financial security, and nearly 80% of the U.S. households have some form of life insurance coverage. Whereas life insurance industry holds $6 trillion in assets distributed among all segments of the economy, is the primary source of financial and retirement security to more than 95 million American families. Whereas the life insurance industry paid $72 billion to beneficiaries in 2013, whereas each year life insurance benefits are a tremendous source of financial relief and security to families that are confronted by the death of a loved one. Whereas despite the peace of mind that life insurance brings to millions of American families, there are still too many Americans who lack adequate life insurance coverage. Whereas the unfortunate reality today is that 96 million adult Americans have no life insurance, and most of those with coverage have less than experts recommend. Whereas, especially during the times like these, when so many families are struggling, life insurance coverage is more important than ever. Most people have far fewer financial resources on which to rely in the event of a premature death in their family. Whereas the nonprofit Life and Health Insurance Foundation for Education and a coalition representing hundreds of leading life insurance companies and organizations have designated September 2014 as Life Insurance Awareness Month, whose goal is to make consumers more aware of their life insurance need, seek professional advice, and take the actions necessary to achieve financial security for the loved ones. I don't know whether I read the rest part.
You can if you want.
Okay. Now,
Always seems awkward to read I therefore somebody else's name, but that's okay. Yeah.
Now, I'm not young and handsome, so it doesn't work. Either is he.
Yeah, neither am I. Yeah, you're safe there, yeah.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Aaron Householder, Mayor of the City of Salina, Kansas, do hereby proclaim September 2014 as Life Insurance Awareness Month in Salina, and do urge our citizens to learn more about life insurance and its benefits.
Great. What events do you all have planned this month?
Of course, we had the national conference that we attended. 1,400 members attended. One of the unique events, the organization's been around for 125 years, and for 124 years we went without a female president, so we inaugurated our first female president the 125th year.
There you go.
That was kind of nice. Our chapter appeared on stage as one of 14 chapters out of 600 nationwide that achieved the platinum level of service. So that was kind of nice.
Well, congratulations.
And so our association has been around since 1913, and we have 5 past state presidents and 4 Hall of Fame members. We have 42,000 members nationally.
Great. Nice organization. I've got your signed copy here.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This moves us on to our Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public who would like to come and bring something before the City Commission that is not on today's agenda. This would be an opportunity for you to do so. We just ask that you give your name and address. That's all.
Hi, Dennis Benoit, 1773 20th Road in Ellsworth County. I went to the Steel Day, PKM Steel Day, and I just thought I'd let you know the best kept secret is their homemade sauerkraut. So next time we probably won't have a booth there, but I'll go just for the sauerkraut. It was a really interesting day, beautiful weather and everything. So people at home, you missed it if you weren't there, but they have a lot of people. PKM Steel employs a lot of people, a lot of young people. And so in talking with them, asking whether they are going to use their superpower on November the 4th, their vote, a lot of them said they're putting it off. Some are registered. So I thought I'd stop by Don Merriman's office and get a couple of dates. This is the item you need to pick up if you want to register. Never registered before. Pick this up, fill it out. It's pretty simple. If it's the first time, then you need to have a proof of citizenship. And as long as you are 18 before the election, you can go ahead and fill this out. And because registration is a little bit different, they normally close it down 21 days before, so the last day you can register, and they have a couple of late nights, is October the 14th. They're open the regular day and then from 5 to 9 p.m. So get it that night, or October 9th and 10th, they're also open till 9 p.m. So please don't put it off too long, because that is a superpower that got these people elected right here. Your vote, it does count. So also I thought I'd go ahead, there was a lot of discussion about how it's worded, so I thought I'd say it one more time, very simply, like our signs will say, vote yes to stop fluoridation. The reason for that is because that's the way it has to be worded, because in 1946 the city commissioners up here voted fluoridation in. What we are really doing is repealing that fluoridation. So that's why you vote yes to stop fluoridation or fluoride. And then while I'm here, I might as well mention, if you don't know very much about fluoride, you might be in luck if you're available 7 o'clock at the Prescott Room, just over here across the mall, or whatever you want to call it, in the lower level of the library at 7 p.m. Salina Cares is going to have a meeting at 7. So if you want to pick up one of those snazzy little blue and white signs, then we're going to have them available there. So please come by, especially if you don't know very much about fluoride. And for the people at home that don't know very much about fluoride, I'll just backtrack a little bit. I know you've heard this before. You don't have a computer, you don't do this, you don't do that. Well, I can solve that problem right now. What do you want to know the basics about fluoride? You can go into your medicine cabinet and look on the back of your toothpaste tube, and it's going to say do not swallow. Well, drug facts and drug warnings, because fluoride is a drug. It's a toxic drug. So you don't want to swallow it. You need to supervise your children, because if they swallow it, that could harm them. The normal size for a brushing of a child is a pea size, and most people, probably 90% of the people at home, have never looked on the back of their toothpaste. You really do need to. And of course, if that child swallows more than a pea size, you need to go ahead and call a physician or local poison control. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, and please register so you can be a voter. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for coming in. Anyone else have anything they'd like to bring before the commission? No? Well, appreciate you coming out today and speaking with us. That moves us on to public hearings and items scheduled for a certain time.
We don't have any.
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, it moves us on to the consent agenda. We have nothing on public hearings. Thank you.
Sure. Item 6.1, approve the minutes of September 8, 2014. Item 6.2, award of contract for the water main replacement project Phase 6, project number 10-2842E to Stevens Contractors, Inc. of Salina, Kansas, in the amount of $1,907,925. Item 6.3, award of contract for the water tower maintenance Sunset, Schilling, Markley, and Burma, project number 14-3037 to Utility Service Company Incorporated in the amount of $250,900.
Is there anything a commissioner would like removed or amended from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent
Mayor,
agenda. Yes.
Like 6.3 removed.
Okay. Any other items? Any other commissioners? Okay, we'll remove item 6.3.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, less item number 6.3.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, less item 6.3. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0, and that brings 6.3 in front of us. Ms. Tasker, perhaps? Maybe it might be faster if you just have a specific question. Great.
Actually, one specific question. I noticed on the bids for the work, there was almost a 100% difference from high to low. Was there any specific difference in the proposed services or materials or warranties on the work accounting for that difference?
No, each one of these bidders are to bid to our specific plans and specifications. They may be from a distance that makes it difficult, or they have extra costs for travel, or they may not be interested in the project as much as the lower bidder. Sometimes the work they have currently on their plate to do affects their bid, but every bidder is required to provide to the plans and specifications.
And is this work that's done on a fairly regular basis anyway, or do we bid it out as needed?
We bid it out on a fairly regular basis. We just completed a project in 2011, I believe, similar. We have 8 water towers. We inspect them, and then we complete work on about every 2 or 3 years. We do a process of water towers, interior and exterior. So it's pretty consistent what we're doing here.
So it's more cost-effective to bid it each time than have a long-term contract?
We found it to be cost-effective.
Okay.
As you see these costs, they kind of bounce around. Utility Service did do our last project and was low on that project, and we do have a third-party inspector that actually inspects their work to ensure that it's done properly. So, and they're aware of that. We will have a third-party inspector. So.
They're not a subsidiary of Utility Services Corporation, are they?
No, they're not. They're a consulting firm from
So when it's indicated here that the work was satisfactory meaning it met all our requirements, it's not that it was only satisfactory.
No, I always struggle with satisfactory or excellent or met our expectations, but they did what was required of the plans and specifications and met all of our expectations. And we do a 1-year inspection after the work is complete, and they came back and did that inspection, and we had a few touch-up areas, and they completed all of that work. So,
Were the balance of the towers, the other 4, were those 4 done on the last contract, or are there a couple outstanding still?
there's still some outstanding.
Okay.
we-
And when do you anticipate those then?
We take a look at, we have the inspection done on, and the interior painting roughly every 10 years, exterior maybe 20 years, it depends. But that's
Okay.
kind of the general philosophy. So we probably in 2 or 3 years, we'll look at some additional towers, but we try to do an inspection of a few each year just to stay on top of it and make sure what's going on so we don't get blindsided with a severe problem. And depending on what we find, that inspection determines when we do the work.
And is that epoxy system on the interiors, is that guaranteed for a certain number of years? Or?
It is, and it really depends on how well a job they do with their surface preparation, and that's why we inspect them 1 year after the work is done to see if there's any rust or areas that need touched up, so we can just try to stay on top of that, or if there's any issues. And we also have, we evaluate them from a safety standpoint to any new OSHA regulations to make sure that we stay on top of that. So we're doing 2 different things at one time and those type of things. So.
Thank you.
Questions?
I have a peripheral question regarding sewer backups. Would that be more appropriate here,
Other
now,
business.
or during other business?
Probably other business. Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Tasker. Any other discussion on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, move approval of the award of contract for water tower maintenance, project number 14-3037 to Utility Service Company in the amount of $250,900.
Second.
Motion is second to approve contract or award contract 14-3037. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0, and that'll move us on to administration.
Item 7.1, resolution number 14-7136, appointing Vice Mayor John Blanchard to fill the vacant Economic Development Working Group seat.
Mr. Gage.
Commissioners, as you know, back in June, the city and Salina Airport Authority both entered into an agreement with the International Economic Development Council to provide economic development planning services for a community. And part of that action is a resolution, and part of that action was also to appoint a working group. And currently, the city has 2 seats on that working group. One is filled, of course, by Mayor Householder. The other is vacant. Commissioner Blanchard has graciously stepped in as the vice mayor in the last meeting, but we felt it would be good to go ahead and ratify that, given the appointments were made by resolution. So we've given you a resolution to do that, and then we'll make it official.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, I'd entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution Number 14-7136, appointing Vice Mayor John Blanchard to fill the vacant Economic Development Working Group seat.
Second.
Okay, and I should have asked if there was any further discussion on that. I don't know if there was anything else. If not,
No, is there any
okay.
public on that, or?
I
Oh,
did,
yeah, do we need to open that to the public on this?
It's really up to you.
Oh. We'll pause. Anyone from the public who'd care to discuss this issue? You might want to say no. It's not too late. Okay.
I did have, if we,
Sure, let's-
discussion, I did have a question on that. When I looked at that working group, it's the same working group that was noted in the, I think it was whenever it was, we looked at that before. And I had sent in a list of some really good qualified women that I'd like to see on that board, since there's only 2 out of 19. Do you know if that's gotten to the chair, or?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that list was the list, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was a list for those to be interviewed for the actual process versus on that particular board.
It's the ones that makes the decision.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, keep in mind a couple things with this working group. One, it's a temporary committee. It's not intended to go on forever. And second, when we looked at that, we looked at, first of all, a lot of the folks who were kind of involved in those discussions in the process involved our SEDIC committee. And so at the time we said, well, it makes sense to include all of the SEDIC committee, which is why we notice it up for them, also for the commission, just in case others show up. And then there were some others that were involved, others in the citizenry. And so the resolution established the board with that in mind. It's certainly subject to the commission if you want to change members on the board. Our thought at that time was that we recognize that with regards to those who represent the positions on the board, it didn't really provide the full diversity that I think the expectation might have had, but it didn't really form in quite the natural way a new committee might form, and so you kind of had somewhat limitations with that. So if you wanted to change it, you could. Now, again, this action is just to replace the city commission seat position, so that's really something you need as a governing body to speak to.
yeah. I would say at least a couple of things. The one thing I would say is the 2 women on there are very vocal and very good. And one of them's on there, so they're doing a good job.
No,
But
she's
Well,
not
no,
on there.
that's
There's-
the 2 female members are actually Rita.
Rita
oh, I'm sorry.
Deister.
Oh, they were guest members, I guess,
Yeah,
at our
see,
last
I
meeting.
think we have confusion because
That's
once
true.
we did that, we
Yeah.
started the process. And in the process, we were asked, us, the city and the other organizations were asked to provide suggestions of names
Yeah.
for those to be interviewed. It wasn't to be on this
Yeah.
particular working group. It was to be interviewed in the planning process. And that's where we got a list, and I think that's where that list actually came
Yeah,
from.
that may be. Well,
Right. And just for clarification, because in the discussions that we had at the time that we were approving the IEDC participation in the study portion, I think we did have a pretty clear discussion about kind of what we felt about the makeup of the working task group at that time. And I think it's important to know that even though that working group has kind of been set, that we need to encourage extra additional different voices during the process. I think that we are beginning to achieve some of that, and so I just would welcome the public. Of course, you, Commissioner Crawford, you can go to those meetings, and you will have a strong voice in
I will.
what happens there. And that we, the 2 of us, are simply representing this board, but you certainly are welcome to be there, as are the rest of the commissioners. And I think that, at least I can speak for myself, I really hope that if as many of you that are able to will be there and help to add your voice to to that process. But I think that there was that disappointment in the makeup of the board. I think that we've made that pretty clear, and hopefully moving forward, the gravity and the seriousness that hopefully came across and our concerns there will be heard by the other 17 members of that board as decisions are being made for the entire community. So.
Yeah, and one thing that might be helpful for you to know is at the next meeting, we have a couple things that are items on the agenda. One is to address the roles with regards to economic development, the roles of the agencies that are involved. And the other, under other business, we're going to talk about community engagement, because we do recognize that in the process, excuse me, there was some, but probably didn't go as deep as it needed to into our citizenry and crossing over the various diverse backgrounds in our community. So we will be making recommendation for a pretty comprehensive effort to try to bring that voice into this process, because we do feel in the long-range aspect of what people think about economic development, what's good for Salina, what's needed in Salina, that we need to do that. So we'll be presenting that at that meeting. So maybe that'll get some folks interested in coming to attend.
And I think kind of where you were going to, maybe just put it in a simple language, is basically when they set up the committee, we took, I think, the former head of the airport authority, the current, and we just sort of took those positions. But I think what it really means, and that made sense. I mean, there were people who were involved in current economic activities, but I think what it does point out, Commissioner Crawford, is that none of those positions had traditionally been held by women. And I think that that is the simple message, is that we need to get more women on those boards. And I think that's what we've kind of constantly encouraged, is to get them involved, and therefore
well,
they would have been at the table.
Well, it needs to be representative of the community, and there's certainly 10%. I mean, the community.
Yeah.
More than 10%.
Probably more women here than, yeah.
You're correct in the sense that was an entity. It's more of an entity-type board than it is a community board. And that doesn't mean that it couldn't still be more diverse. It's just that was, at the time, that was the thinking.
Where it came out of.
But as we really think about the community input, we do, and we will be focusing on the diversity of our community and bringing that in, because quite honestly, we're not providing those services all the entities involved. We're not providing those services for our own best interest.
Right.
They're for the betterment of the community, and so it makes sense to ask the community what they think on some key questions, and that's what we intend to do.
Great, thank you. Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Commissioners, real quick on the next item, you have 7.2. In consultation with our legal counsel here, 7.2 and 7.4 are related, and we believe 7.4 should be brought up ahead of 7.2.
Okay, do we need to make a motion for that, or is that one of my rare fiats?
I think you're.
I'm sorry.
I think you're within your fiat unless you get an objection from someone.
I'm going to go ahead and move 7.4 up in front of 7.2. How about that? That felt powerful. Yeah. For those of you just joining us, I so rarely get to do anything on my own. It's my limited power. Yeah. Does that work, in Commissioner Vice Mayor? Okay, does that work? Okay.
Item 7.4, authorization to utilize a qualifications-based process to select a construction manager at risk to construct the planned improvements to Fire Station Number 1.
Chief Mulligan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nice to see you again. We just spent time in a study session this afternoon on some other issues. But the reason I'm here today, having survived about 20 months worth of construction on the first phase of Fire Station 1, I started with a full head of hair. I'm down to about a half a head of hair now, is to look at a different process. And if you ask me, was I completely happy with the process as it unfolded, it really wasn't. I thought there was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of things where we could have coordinated things a lot better. And so I'm up for anything that will streamline that process and make things flow better. And it seems like construction manager at risk makes a lot of sense. Bringing in a construction manager with a set of qualifications to work with the architectural firm would be an advantage to the city. One of the things, it talks about the advantages. It says the city makes a selection based on qualifications because the construction manager at risk is selected for their qualifications, as they're inclined to maximize their service and their allegiance to the city in order to obtain repeat work and good reference. I think a number of communities have used this to great advantage. I think that it would certainly help me as the fire chief in constructing the rest of the fire station down there to have a construction manager. And actually it kind of spins out of the Bicentennial Center over there and the project that they have. Dion Luthen, the Park and Rec director who's running that project, is using this methodology, and I thought it sounded really good. And I was lucky enough, or fortunate enough, to work with the manager, and he said, well, why don't you tag into that and try to use CMAR for the rest of your project. I wish, rewinding the clock, it would have been for phase 1 as well as for this second phase. But anyway, it selects the construction manager based on qualifications, and then they work with the architect to put the design together, to identify all the areas. And my goal, honestly, my goal is not to be standing up here about midway through the project and be trying to explain why we forgot this or why we forgot that. That is not what I like to do. So if you have any questions about CMAR, I have a number of people here. Keith Searcy from FRU is here. FRU's been a great help to us, and a great, Keith actually was working out in New York after Hurricane Sandy, working on rebuilding and guiding some of that construction process after the hurricane before he came to Salina. And Aaron Martin, who's a member of our city legal team, Aaron was a great help in going through these contracts and CMAR. And actually, Aaron identified that we needed to do this first and get this out of the way before you see the actual agenda item on the construction project. So I thank Aaron. He worked over the weekend to get it to you, and so I'll answer any questions, or we can turn to them for any answers.
Great. Any questions for staff?
Sounds like
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public on this issue? Okay.
I'd just like to say that and just as a procedural thing, it is kind of nice that we have one step in the process knocked out, and that is the owner's rep on this one. So really, as part of this is just we're approving the process here, and then after this, the designer, and then the contractor. Correct.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. And just a couple quick things on this as well. As you know, the construction manager at risk process is different than a typical design bid build process. And there are some benefits and there's some risks involved with it, and we're in the process of using it right now at the Bicentennial Center. I do know there is some concern in our community. One individual voiced it to me that the CMAR process somehow makes it more difficult to use would make it more difficult to use a local contractor. I would disagree with that. And as a matter of fact, I actually think it gives a better opportunity when we review qualifications to look at some of our local general contractors, because I believe, and I always have firmly believed, that we have very good quality general contractors that are well suited for the scale of project. So just something to keep in mind if you're approached by that question. And we did think the recommendation to go with this process is pretty worthwhile, because it will bring the designer, hopefully here soon, and the general contractor together at some point way early in the process, so that you don't get into those, well, that's a design issue, no, that's a contractor issue later on, and help really take a closer look at the project before we get to a real number.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, I was actually going to address that with one of the other resolutions, but is there any language that strongly suggests or urges local contractors be used when equally qualified to?
No, not, and you will see in some cities, you'll see some form of local preferences, and others you don't. We historically haven't in Salina, primarily because of a concern of getting and it may depend on the type of project or type of equipment or material that you're trying to get, but the thought being that is when you put those types of things in place, you have to be very careful, particularly when your idea is to have quality and be cost conscious. But you have to be careful that if you have competitive bidders that are just outside your area, a lot of times in your region, very, very possibly, that if they, because of a local preference, would not get a bid, and before you know it, they're not participating, your number of bidders can be reduced, and that can change the pricing impact in the environment. And so you have communities that look at that differently, but that's, for the most part, been the practice for at least probably 20 to 25 years in Salina. So what we try to do is encourage, obviously, the most competitive bids possible, but we recognize sometimes, as you just saw, you get bids, local or non-local, and you can't quite explain what went into them. But I think with the CMAR process, for the scale of a project, I actually think it does provide better opportunity for a local contractor than a typical design bid build might. An example of that is with the first phase. Cheney is not from Salina. They're not too far away, but they're not actually from Salina, and so they were the low bid on the project, and so they were awarded that. And they've also done another project for us, an earlier project at the Bicentennial Center. This wouldn't suggest who would be selected because we're very premature for that. But what it does do, if you're the bidders who bid before and you're like, well, we can't beat that low contractor. Well, in this process, we're going to look quality first. That's the very first thing we're going to look at as we select a general contractor to make sure we have the highest quality. And I do think that opens up the ability for local contractors to be involved. So I'm kind of excited to see how this works out with the scale of project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Anyone here from the public care to discuss this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Commission for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize staff to proceed with seeking requests of qualifications for a construction manager at risk associated with the upcoming improvements to Fire Station Number 1.
Second.
Motion is second to authorize a qualifications-based process to select a construction manager at risk to construct the planned improvements to Fire Station Number 1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 7-4, and that takes us back to 7-2. Is that how we're doing that? Okay.
Item 7.2, resolution number 14-7138, authorizing the mayor to sign the architectural services contract for Fire Station Number 1, second phase.
Chief, you did such a great job. We're asking you to give us a second performance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
Third performance, actually.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a long haul. Like I said, it's been 20 months, and so we go back through this, and I think that our process is much improved this time. Looking at this architectural services process, we went out again for a request for qualifications. We had a number of submittals, as you could see in the material. We did have Keith on board at the time to help rank those. The ranking matrix that you see in the back and that we gave you the scoring on was simply on their submittals. It wasn't on their interviews, their approach, things of that nature that came out during the interviews. And so the final recommendation was to work with PKHLS Architecture for designing this particular project. I'll tell you, we had many conference calls with Frew and with including Keith and John Frew and Aaron and myself, and I didn't have to say much because they hammered out the contract, and certainly Frew identified several areas that we didn't need to pay for in architectural services. Now, I thought that was really good. I could never have caught them myself because they were things that were part and parcel of a normal AIA contract. And with Aaron's help and Keith's help, we were able to massage this contract into what you see today. And we're asking you to ask any questions that you would like on this. I can't get I'm kind of an inch deep and a mile wide on this subject, so it probably will involve either Aaron, Keith, or even Vince if you want to talk directly to the architectural firm. But Vince Haynes is here with PKHLS too. So,
Just have one question. I'm guessing the answer. In the resolution, is Convergence Design LLC another name for PK?
No, Commissioner, that's a typographical error. It should say PKHLS Architects.
We have a new one also
Yeah.
that was here when we...
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Just didn't go down far enough. All right. Don't need to ask the question.
Commissioners, if I can, thank you. If I can add to what Larry said too, when you have a lot of information in your packet, and if you go through, you've got a copy of the agreement, then you get into a couple of recommendation letters from Frew Development Group, and then you have the scoring totals. One thing I do want everyone to understand, because you may get a question on this from the public, and we had someone who was really maybe put more weight into the scoring totals than what should be. When you look at the scoring totals, those scoring totals were based on the initial presentation of information and what was known at that time only. And what the purpose of the scoring at that stage is to determine who you're going to interview in this process. It's not, if that was the final score, we wouldn't need to interview anyone and ask for additional information, check references and so forth. So the idea is really to stratify a group to then further interview, have them come in and provide a presentation and do really the deeper homework. And then, so when you look at that, one could look at it and say, well, let's see, HTK Architects had an 87. Why aren't they the ones, that were selected, or someone else that's up there? And the reason is again, you can kind of see a stratification from about 79.5 up. That created the group for the interview. That created the deeper research, and then that allowed the staff and FRU to work together to really determine who they felt was, in the end, the best professional fit for the process. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't, but that's on the best information available. So that's important to understand. So if someone asks the question about the scoring, it's not intended to select the architect. It's intended to help with the first step in the process. So and I don't know if Chief Mulliken has anything else to offer, but I thought that would be good to explain.
Introduce you to him. Not only that, if I ever get in trouble, we'll call Keith. He's a big old boy, and I'm taking him with me.
So, as the city manager said, we looked at their initial submittals that were submitted. I think it was July 15th, and I just went through piece by piece based on the actual RFQ line items that what they were required to submit based on that document, and created a score, like he said, to stratify the different firms and to figure out who we wanted to come in and do interviews with. And the final selection was done based on the interview. We asked a lot of questions. Most of the firms, we just had them come in and explain their firm, their firm's culture, their past experience, where they've been, where they're going, and some other detailed questions specific to this project. And based on all their answers from all the different firms, PKHLS was definitely the top one. There was 3 firms: HTK Architects out of Overland Park, PKHLS, and Tevis out of Lenox, and it was really close. I had to make a really hard decision to make my recommendation to Chief Mulliken, and in the end, it really came down to how PKHLS presented their information. They brought their whole team. Tevis and HTK, they brought 2 or 3 people. These guys brought their whole team. They were very interactive within the discussions that we had in the interview, and they definitely, I feel like they're going to be the best candidate to provide us architectural engineering service for this project.
Okay. Yeah, and reading through this, the one thing that it looked like might have been a sort of deficiency in the initial scoring was the time and budgeting. Was that something that you were able to work out? That was
yes. So their PKHLS in their submittal, their time frame actually exceeded what the city was requesting within the RFQ. But during the interview, we worked that out. They said that was what they typically do, but they said they had no problem sticking to what the city was requesting, that 90-day period within the design time frame within the RFQ.
okay.
So just to be clear, on their proposed schedule, they could have been ahead of schedule, but it didn't work out for how we wanted things. Is that right?
No, they were actually exceeding the time frame.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what that was again, that was what they typically see on a project of this size. But after discussing, the different phases within the interview, that they said that the 90-day time frame that the city specified within their RFQ, that they felt like that was reasonable and that they could definitely achieve that.
Okay, and same sorts of questions, I assume, were asked all companies on different lengths. Okay,
Yep.
perfect, great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And then just, I did notice that again in the initial, that they had ranked pretty highly in the experience category on that, and if the representative of the firm would wish to kind of just maybe share some of that with us, that'd be great. Give us an opportunity to hear from them.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Vince Haynes with PKHLS Architecture. We're located in El Dorado. First of all, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. We look forward to working with the City of Salina on this project and Chief Mulliken. The experience level, I guess, that we presented that we were proud of was working with several other emergency management type entities, the Butler in particular, Butler County Sheriff's Department and their 911 center, and working with them, keeping the 911 center open while we completely renovated that space, renovated and relocated them in the building. So it was a pretty pretty extensive renovation to that, and several other fire stations and emergency management facilities in and around El Dorado. So that's kind of the experience level we presented. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Any specific questions? Sure. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We have, we're looking forward to this. It shouldn't disrupt the station too much. This is all new construction on the east side, the 2 bays, and so it shouldn't disrupt the station any. This is a really good project for us. I hope you're proud of the lettering on the first phase. Our new lettering above the front door. It really looks good, really sharp at night, and you remove that from the first part of the contract and let us handle that, and we took care of that along with Gleason Signs, did that lettering, and Gary Gleason did an excellent job, and so I'm so proud of how that looks, and we're happy with our building right now. We have some continuing issues with this first phase that we're trying to work through, so those will be ongoing, but we will get through them because the contractor has stepped up and cleaned up some of the punch list that was lingering. We have some design systems problems with our range hood and things of that nature. It's not working quite right, but I think we'll get that resolved. We have this part of the project which involves the 2 bays. It involves the primal vent system, which removes the diesel exhaust from the building, reconfiguring that when we add these 2 bays. We have the apparatus floor, the old apparatus floor, renewing that somehow because the offices look so good and the upstairs looks really great, and the old apparatus floor needs to be brightened up, whether it's lighting, painting, what have you. That's part of the project there also. So we have those 3 major components in this phase, and that's really what we're talking about. I'll be excited to work with the construction manager at risk process. I think it will probably make my job a little easier, maybe get me up in front of you a little less, and I'll be much happier. The last thing I'd like to touch on before we touch on this recommendation is there's another component that I want to bring back to you at some point, and that is around our flagpole. I want to build a memorial plaza around our flagpole for the art component for the building. Our art component really is our sign that we put up there to keep the 50s deco look. But I think it would be a wonderful a gift to the firefighters of all ages, future, today, and past, if we have a memorial plaza built around the flagpole. My idea would be to be able to sell engraved bricks and have it pay for itself. It may be one of the few art projects that ever actually pays for itself through people buying bricks and putting it in around the Memorial Plaza. That will be something separate I bring back to you. I don't want you to be surprised by that, but I think it would be a wonderful piece of art to have a full-size statue of a bronze and that sort of stuff, and have a place to dedicate to emergency response paramedics and firefighters. Getting back to this commission agenda item, we have simply to approve the resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the contract and move forward. And if you have any other questions, that's option 1. Option 2 is to tell me what else to do. And with that, I'll answer any remaining questions and let you get on.
Commissioners, a quick point too. In the fiscal note, we have a budget of the project of $800,000. One thing that you do need to keep in mind is that is based on a very, very conceptual rendering of what the project might look like. It's not based on any degree of design level. So, given that, it is what we used for the budget at the time. It's about 3 years old.
3 years old.
It's about 3 years old. But what we'll need to do is, once we, of course, we'll hopefully bring on the architectural firm here soon, and then the next step will be to go through the process of selecting the general contractor. And once those two come together, and they start looking at the scope and scale of this project and begin pricing it out and working with subs and so forth, as soon as we can try to refine that number, we will, because at least if we anticipate you're going to have a budget question in front of you. So rather than wait to the very, very end, we'd like to try to do that somewhere in the middle when the numbers start to become clear for us. So keep in mind that's our desire to do that. So if you do have a budget question, we get to it earlier in the process, and that may be part of the so-called value engineering. But quite honestly, this project doesn't have by far as many aspects to it as, say, the Bicentennial Center. So your value engineering options might be somewhat more limited than what they would be for a project like that. But just to keep you aware of that.
Well, I think that what I'm excited about on this phase of the process is when we do get to that number, that we're going to be real close to that number when we end, and have everything that we want, expect, and need. I like the fact that we have an owner's rep now that is going to be taking on those questions and making those decisions and allowing you to focus your attentions on the fire department and not on building. And so I really am pleased and excited to see that process actually work. So because I think that at least for me, I was troubled by a lot of the overruns on the first phase of this. So I think that we're probably addressing that very well and moving forward with a better way to do this. So I appreciate everybody kind of going down this path and making this happen. So look forward to this process.
And I want to thank you for your, you and the fire department salute to the 9/11. That was in the paper, and I sent you a note on that.
Yes, you did.
That's
Thank
very
you.
nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public have any comments or questions on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Commission for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 14-7138 authorizing the mayor to sign the architectural services contract to PKHLS Architecture, PA of El Dorado, Kansas for Fire Station number 1, second phase.
Second.
Motion and a second for resolution number 14-7138. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next on to 7.3.
Item 7.3, consider items related to acquisition of enterprise resource planning software. 7.3A, resolution number 14-7137, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Tyler Technologies for the purchasing of enterprise resource planning software in the amount of $489,770. 7.3B, authorize staff to purchase the required technology infrastructure in an amount not to exceed $30,000. 7.3C, authorize staff to optionally acquire 2 additional modules subject to a more detailed review of system capabilities. 7.3D, authorize staff to negotiate a lease purchase to provide for necessary financing of the system.
Great, thank you. And this will require 4 separate motions, is that correct?
I believe that would be best, yes.
Okay,
Mayor,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Franz?
With respect to that, there probably will be a second action coming down the road with respect to the lease purchase, because typically they will require a formal resolution, but we can't do that until we talk to them about terms. So it's kind of a 2-step process.
Okay.
Enterprise resource planning is the terminology now used to describe operations software, financial accounting, human resources, utility billing, software that cities use to manage their resources. Financial and accounting payroll software used by the city was now used by the city was originally acquired in 1988. That didn't strike me until I thought that my youngest son is now in graduate school and a little bit slow at it to boot. And when the city of Salina acquired this software, I was carrying him down the hallway from the delivery room to the nursery. That's really, I think, quite remarkable that we have stretched it that far. I think typically you see these systems lasting, it used to be 5-6 years, now maybe it's 8 or 10 with good support, but 26 years is really quite unusual. The result is that we have, over the years, managed to do a number of workarounds or supplemental systems to deal with things we need to do. We have supplemental spreadsheets, we have databases, we have some supplemental package systems that we use to track things or to do processes that we can't do in a basic system. To give the current vendor credit, New World Systems, they have continued to support the software even though there are fewer and fewer of their customers at the level we're at. but they have dropped hints from time to time that, sometime you might want to think about changing this, because ultimately when their customer base gets small enough, it becomes unaffordable for them to continue to support us, and that will happen eventually. I know several years ago they were, I believe, under 70 customers on this system. By now it's probably considerably less than that. Result of this is late 2013, we began working on assembling a request for a proposal for an enterprise resource system. We distributed those to 7 selected vendors, including Oracle, Logic Solutions, New World Systems, SunGard HTE, or I guess SunGard Public Sector, Harris ERP, Tyler Technologies, Computer Information Concepts. Those vendors were selected because in checking around some of our peer cities, they all appeared to have installations in the state of Kansas, and so we had at least some confidence that they could deal with any particular issues that might be peculiar to our state, and that if when we went on site visits, it would be an affordable visit. Honolulu might be fun, but it's expensive to get there to look at software. So we had 2 considerations for that. We ended up receiving 2 responses, one from New World Systems, who's our current vendor, and another from Tyler Technologies. 5-person steering group representing computer technology, finance, human resources, and Parks and Recreation departments spent about 6 weeks going through the responses. Third reason for limiting the participation was you don't want to go through a dozen of these. That's one. It takes a while to wade through that with the committee and figure out what's happening. So we were actually kind of fortunate that we just had a few responses. Spent about 6 weeks on that. And then we went through a series of demonstrations. I believe each vendor provided us with about a 6-hour demonstration of various capabilities of their software. That was done to a larger group of about, I believe there's like 14 or 15 staff participated in that. We invited a lot of the people who are where the rubber meets the road, the data entry people, the payroll people, the finance people who actually work with these things on a day-to-day basis, so that they could see how they both worked and get a sense of which ones they might feel were preferable. We also, some members of the steering committee visited users for both of the existing systems. Kearney, Nebraska has New World Systems in place, has a new version. We also visited Grand Island. That was fortuitous because they're next door to each other, and so we were able to do that in a 2-day trip and be reasonably efficient about it. And then we also went to Hayes to look at, Hayes has Tyler Technologies, as does Grand Island. But Grand Island is they've had it for a long, long time, and we're doing some things that we didn't feel fully utilize the software. And HR in particular wanted to go back and look at another installation to see how they were handling those sorts of issues. We did obtain pricing on both in-house hosting, which means it's parked down here in the Computer Technologies Department, or software as a service, which means it's out there somewhere and we connect via the internet. We did end up looking most seriously at in-house hosting. The software as a service was more expensive, and there are also issues with that we weren't entirely comfortable with for this sort of software. Overall assessment was either system provides certainly the minimum functionality we required. Matter of fact, both of them provide a good deal more capacity than we have now. Some of those examples, modern and intuitive user interface. it's always kind of fun to bring some youngster in as a new employee and sit them down in front of a green screen that requires that they use the keyboard instead of the mouse, and sometimes it's a bit of an adjustment to do that. We'll be able to reintegrate some of the separate packages we now have and put them back together into a single package, which should be beneficial from the standpoint of eliminating some duplicate entry, perhaps eliminating some errors in processing, and so on. Be able to use perhaps a modern purchasing card system again that would allow us to do much more business electronically in terms of bringing, not having to manually process those transactions. It has e-procurement capabilities, streamlining the bank reconciliation process, we certainly hope. Both systems are able to integrate to iPad or portable devices. If guys want to work on the road, a lot of times that would be possible. I think we had actually just a couple of weeks before we visited Grand Island, their fire chief was in town, and he was on his iPad approving requisitions while he was visiting Salina, but he was talking to his system in Grand Island, which I found was fascinating. Human resources system with the ability to keep history, track applicants, handle workflow, budgeting features based on position authorizations, and so on. A lot of that stuff we've done, but a lot of it's in this file, some of it's on this computer. It's just been done in different ways. An option for paperless payroll, interfaces to electronic time and attendance systems, which is something that we would like to look at some point, and improved inquiry and reporting capacity. As you might guess, these are complex systems. Rarely do you make a decision based on one or even two factors, but rather a combination of considerations. 13 out of the 15 participants that provided me with feedback had a clear preference for Tyler Technologies, the Munis product, as an overall solution, and the same was true of all 5 members of the steering committee. Some of the considerations cited was that Tyler has a very organized and what appears to be a very strong approach to implementation. Lots of advanced planning. I would note that in my conversations with the city of Lenexa, who just went through this process, their go-live date was January 1 of 2014, so they went through this last year, 18 months before that. Their comment was that it was smoother than they expected. Note they didn't say smooth, they said smoother than expected. And it was on schedule, which to me says a lot, because it's pretty easy for these things to get diverted. Tyler Dashboard, which is the user interface, was perceived as being more intuitive and comfortable. Their content management capacity, basically anything that they print to an image first. So in many cases, you never ever have to generate the paper record. It prints to an image and gets archived. They do talk to Laserfish, which is their document imaging system. They have what they call an evergreen, which I know is a sales word, but they have what they call an evergreen upgrade policy, which means that every customer Tyler has a current system. You don't have to, other than your scheduled support fees, you don't have to pay for upgrades. So if they change their system in whatever way, it comes as a part of the package to all their customers. They have very tight integration within their package, and also with Excel, with Microsoft Word, with imaging. One of the things you can do from many of their screens is you can actually link directly to Microsoft Word documents or PDFs. So if you're inquiring about something, there's further explanation there, and it's in a document, it can be tied into that for a direct view. They were more completely able to handle our special assessments processes. Our special assessment system is a homegrown system, and it is, well, it works, you know, but once, you know, there are a couple of us who are getting a little long in the tooth, so to speak, and when we retire, maintaining that system as well as maintaining some of these other specialty stuff is going to be an issue, I believe. So it's important to get that carried over to something that can be maintained into the future. They have strong project accounting capabilities. You know, I shouldn't use this word, but awesome inquiry capabilities in terms of what I've seen in both Hayes and Grand Island. A lot of that depends on setting the system up properly, but it was really amazing to see the things they could do on the screen. Tyler's a site license. Doesn't matter how many users we have, it's the same price. And customer support, Tyler customers were all complimentary of the support. They offer support in a number of different ways through a blog-like online portal, through the traditional call-ins. They have a knowledge base that's available that people can look at, or their customers can. Carney was positive about New World support, but I would have to say that our own staff had some concerns about that based on our experience with New World, and that did weigh significantly in the decision, at least for some of them. Time frame anticipated for implementation is 15 to 18 months. I believe the dates that we've talked about tentatively at this point is for the finance system to be up and running by January 1st of 2016. I have to think about my years here. I'm sorry, that's payroll. Finance should be by mid-year of 2015. So it's about a 15 to 18 month time span to get things pretty much up and running. The contract provides for a fixed schedule of payments for the software license. We'll basically pay it in quarters. And then as we use installation service, they bill us on a time and material basis. Total price for the system, as we have it configured, is $489,770. That includes the software license, all of the implementation costs, data conversion, travel, and some miscellaneous services. Special year sales tax budget has $130,000 per year set aside for this project for the years 2014 through 2019, for a total of $780,000. Our plan at this point is to commit $130,000 in cash from 2014, with the balance financed through a lease purchase, payments to be due in 2016 to 2019. Amount budgeted is sufficient to accommodate the anticipated payments. Future annual maintenance on the system will be about $48,000 per year. But the first year maintenance is included in the purchase price, which is good because typically the first year you don't really get to operate the system that much. You're installing it, so you know it kind of makes sense. But some vendors don't do that. Contract does provide Tyler will honor proposal pricing, including the 20% discount on any additional modules that we decide we might want to add on within a 12-month period. At this point, we're planning on in-depth review of 2 additional modules, service orders and animal licensing. For whatever reason, when we sent the RFP out, we didn't specify animal licensing, probably because we did not fully have control of the animal shelter yet when this started, and it just wasn't on our radar screen. And service orders is something that's become a a topic of discussion in the last couple of months among the staff. If implemented, the acquisition cost of those two modules would be about $66,600. Actions today: approve the resolution number 147137, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Tyler Technologies to purchase enterprise resource planning software with a price tag of $489,770. Item 2 is authorize staff to acquire the necessary technology infrastructure to support the system in the amount not to exceed $30,000. Authorize the acquisition of the 2 additional modules, and then authorize staff to negotiate a lease purchase agreement to finance the system. And we, of course, as I said, would come back for a resolution on the final, for a final decision on the lease purchase. At this point, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions?
Are you paying annual service contracts now on the various systems?
To New World, yes, we are. And I believe that the annual price now is about $28,000. I don't know if Jack's back there or not.
32.
Pardon?
32.
32,000. Okay. But the system's not nearly as comprehensive as the one we're obtaining. So.
Would you anticipate that you'd be able to free up staff for other future, as yet unknown duties with the new time that they would
you know, you're going to watch me tap dance here a little bit because I'm hesitant to commit to that, but I would certainly expect that the system will give us some efficiencies that could free up time. Now, it's entirely possible, it's likely that they're going to be dispersed throughout the organization with respect to data entry people in the various departments. But I would certainly hope that we'll end up being able to do things more efficiently. That probably will not be apparent for the first year or so, because as people try to learn the new system, it just takes an enormous amount of time to learn the system and get acclimated to using it. This is a process. One of the reasons it's 26 years old is everybody hates to go through this process. It is simply a gut-grinding process to try to upgrade your software systems. Retrain everybody, it just takes some time. But I would anticipate obviously, if we're not having to maintain a half a dozen ancillary systems, we ought to come out ahead on that a little bit.
I keep hoping that I will see those same savings with my electronic medical record, which I'm trying to learn now.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One is that as I'm looking at the price here, I take it that the implementation costs are broad and cover training and all that other. Okay.
That includes all of the configuration of the system, data conversion, training, installation on the computers, and so on.
Okay, and then. As far as the 2 modules go, are there additional modules that they have also that we considered through your committees and your working
Yeah,
group?
there were a number of things that we specifically asked for quotes on that we simply removed because we didn't think that they were warranted. For example, they had, and I forget what they call it. It's essentially a cash receipting, it's not cash receipting module, but something. And it was after we talked to them at the demonstration, it became apparent that really was not what we needed to have. That in fact, what we did could be handled through their other base modules, and so we removed that one. There were a couple like that. They have modules for contracts management. They have I don't know. I'm drawing a blank now.
These were the 2 though that we kind of felt like we needed.
Those were 2 that were the service orders was on the bubble. We did specifically ask for that, And then as we were talking about the system, I thought, well, no, we've got guys using service orders now in various departments. But since that time, we've decided it would be worth looking at trying to bring everybody under one umbrella, if that will work for us.
Right. And then just from a lot of the other things in systems now where we have employee data and customer data and so on.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this? Was the security on both of these kind of comparable, or is that something that's...
Security, I think, generally is what we handle through our operating system rather than in the application software.
Okay.
You know, obviously they're going to have security things like logins and passwords and so on. But in terms of protecting us from the outside world, that is part of our network administration.
Okay.
And part of the operations, not specifically a part of this software.
Okay. And then just for clarification purposes, in looking at the appendix on your pricing summary, is the in-house hosting solution the direction we're going?
Yes.
Okay.
We were obviously looking at that. The remote hosting was a little bit more expensive for one vendor and a lot more expensive for the other.
Right.
But in both cases, the in-house was less expensive. The cloud-hosted stuff, we're not entirely comfortable giving the number of transactions that are processed here, and given our staffing and hardware configuration, that it's the way to go. Mm-hmm. If we had, you know, minimal staff and very little hardware, and we had to buy lots of, you know, if we had to invest, you know, $500,000 in a box to make this work, then that cloud hosting might make more sense.
Right.
And there's other kinds of ancillary issues. We weren't entirely sure about the speed because, again, we have to rely on the size of the pipe coming in over the internet. And while, you know, you can get faster pipe, it's, you know, it's more money to do that on a continuing basis. So we just didn't feel as comfortable with that approach.
And so when you have the 5-year cost here, what do we obviously don't anticipate 26 years out of this system, but we do anticipate more than 5.
I'm not going to be here to say I told you so.
Right. But we expect more than 5. I mean,
I would expect anywhere from I'm going to say 8 to 10 years.
Right.
would be a reasonable expectation.
And those,
you know, Grand Island has had it for, I don't know, Natalie's not here. I don't remember. They've had it for like 14 or 15 years at this point.
Okay. So that cost would actually per annual average come down and down as we go. Okay.
Yeah. I just picked 5 years because it's over a reasonable amount of time, and you can kind of compare then what effect the annual support costs have on the total cost of the system.
Right. Well, hey, great job on the 26 years, by the way.
Yeah. Right.
Is there
This should help with permits and licensing and stuff, shouldn't it? Hopefully.
That is one of the modules that we are not acquiring because they have a freestanding system, and I can see the city manager getting ready to jump on that one.
Yeah, there was a specialized system that just for that was purchased 2 years and a half ago, two years ago. So they can't say that we wouldn't look at what's built into this to see if there's any, you know, anything that could be helpful. But right now, that system is what they have in place.
I was glad to see the animal licensing was in there because that's really a screwed up process now. I've just went through that.
Yeah,
sort
well,
of got a piece of paper and I thought, what's this for?
I don't know enough about it to say anything except that, you know, we do want to look at this system to see if it'll work for us. We still will have, I don't want to mislead you, we still will have some freestanding specialized systems. EMS billing, it's a very specialized niche, even within the medical field. And if you find a provider who provides EMS billing, they probably don't do much of anything else. It's just tough to keep up with. We have our landfill software, which we use for billing our landfill charges. And it, again, is a specialized piece that ties to the scale out there so we can utilize that equipment to its fullest ability. Not to say that we couldn't, maybe do that some other way, but those are two of the specialized segments that we are not at this point going to be attempting to replace.
One other question. Is it known that all the old data will flow easily into the new one without conversion software having to be created?
You will never catch me saying the words flow easily. But yeah, it's pretty, there are protocols for writing the data into an accepted format and then importing it into the new system. The issue is being able to locate it and get it transported over, getting everything you need transported over. But that is also a part of the proposed cost.
And then do you have to hold the old system for a certain period of time to make sure everything is...
The way the installation process will work is we will get the new system in-house, we will get it configured, up and running, we will do some training on it. There will be a test period at which time we will be running transactions through it. And then at some point, we will decide that, yes, it's good enough to go live or not. But at some point, we'll decide it's good enough to go live. And then we will start running all the transactions through that system. There will be a period of time when the interface between payroll and the finance systems will have to be done manually, because finance is going in first. It's the foundation. And then payroll will be done, or human resources software will be done, and this is basically the last 6 months of the process. So there will be a time where there's actually probably extra work to do to make this happen.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public care to comment on any of these 4 potential issues? Not even sure what we're even talking about anymore, but anyway. We'll bring it back to the Commission for possible action.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 14-7137, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Tyler Technologies purchasing of enterprise resource planning software in the amount of $489,770.
Second.
Motion is second to consider resolution number 14-7137. All in, any further discussion? Sorry. No. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize staff to purchase the required technology infrastructure, the hardware and system software, in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
Motion is second to authorize staff to purchase the required technology infrastructure in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize staff to optionally acquire 2 additional modules, the work orders and animal licensing modules, subject to a more detailed review of system capabilities.
Second.
Motion is second to authorize staff to optionally acquire 2 additional modules, subject to a more detailed review of the system capabilities. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize staff to negotiate a lease purchase to provide necessary financing for the enterprise resource planning system.
Second.
Motion is second to authorize staff to negotiate a lease purchase to provide necessary finance for the ERP system. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 5-0. That moves us on to development business, I believe.
Item 8.1, award of contract for consulting services for the Salina Housing Assessment and Strategic Plan.
Mr. Hobby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor and Commissioners. We'd like to bring for you tonight a request for you to approve a contract for services. This is our standard agreement for services for consulting work within the community. We have selected a firm called RDG Planning and Design out of Omaha, Nebraska to work with us on a new housing assessment of existing housing within the community, and most of all, bring forward a strategic plan for us to work on housing within the future. We completed the request for qualifications earlier in the year, mainly in June and July. We received 5 requests from 5 proposals, actually, from the request. We went internationally or nationally with our request. We went to the International Planning Association, American Planning Association, as well as the Kansas and Missouri Planning Associations, the chapter, and put them on the website, allowing planning agencies from all over the United States to hear our desire and needs. We received many calls, several calls I should say, 3 or 4 calls from different agencies from around the United States who really wanted to confirm that we wanted all the items that we had proposed in our request for proposals, because most of them are more in tune to doing a quick review of the existing housing needs. This is a proposed plan according to what the Census Bureau comes up with, numbers and names and those type of things through the last census process. We decided, yes, we wanted to have a more extensive strategic plan put together for our community, and so we sent out requests for proposals. We received 5 back. 5 agencies gave us requests for proposal. There were 5 staff members from our local staff agency that went through each one of those individually. Each one was rated on a scale of 1 to 5 and came up with 2 of the firm's development strategies, as well as RDG planning and design as the top 2. Those 2 agencies were brought into the city of Salina and asked for them to give us an overview and proposal of their processes that they would complete. We also asked for them to bring us back a timeline, because we knew that we were already 30 days basically behind what we thought would be a good timeline to work in. And they also brought us a financial package of what they felt like would be a cost for their company to complete the complete review. Both agencies were very close in their scoring as far as city staff is concerned, but we felt like RDG Planning was the leader in the group by bringing back nearly 100% of all the requests we had in our request for proposal. The other firm would have completed this in a much shorter period of time and for a few less $1,000s, but we felt like that we were getting a better strategic plan at the end when we worked through RDG. You have before you the request for proposal and the highlights of that request for proposal. I will not read those individually, but we feel like probably the biggest factor that we want to look at is getting community engagement into this plan. We feel like that staff could give you a report on what we feel like we need in housing in the city of Salina. We know that you also would be able to give us ideas and thoughts about what we need. Any developers in the community would do the same thing, but we felt like an outside source who was willing to go to the extremes of riding a bicycle up and down every street in the community and assessing the housing structures we have in our community was well worth looking into. RDG Planning will be starting here this next month, and they will be doing a drive-by assessment of many areas of the community. Our staff has also completed nearly 1,000 assessments on different structures within the community, and we will send that assessment to RDG Planning as well. We feel like we're going to have some very great opportunities for us to get a baseline, some backgrounding in our community of what our housing stock actually exists, and then talk to developers and the financial people as well as potential outside developers wanting to come to our community to put up some type of strategic plan that we know that we could actually work and function over the next few years as far as housing in our community. So we've asked that you will request that you approve the contract for services with RDG Planning and Design out of Omaha, Nebraska. They have given us a calculation of about a $50,000 process, and we feel like we can be completed sometime in the spring, early summer of this next year with their program, but I believe it's going to be a great program when we're completed. We have multiple staff members who were involved with the review of our request for qualifications as well as hearing their oral presentations to our staff, and so we stand ready to answer any questions you would have about our contract for services for planning, a housing assessment, and strategic plan.
Great. Any questions for staff?
Just one of the target market surveys. I see, I guess, page B6.
The market assessment?
Target markets
surveys.
It's B6 on this. On the
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel though you'll reach a broad enough cross-section of the community?
That's the beauty of working with RDG Design is if we do not feel like we're getting adequate coverage throughout the community they have agreed to work with us to extend any contractor services they would have. But we do think we're going to pretty well pinpoint ideas and thoughts and strategies for our community. So,
Thank you.
On that Exhibit A, I really like the stakeholder group interview portion that you've included in that. And I know that, I don't know if that's one of the items that some of the people that were contacting asking you if that's what you wanted. But I do know that including builders and developers, nonprofit organizations, all the different stakeholder groups, I think is critical to really drilling down and getting a detailed, accurate assessment. And I liked, and I appreciate all the work that you did to be thorough and detailed, because this is something that really is, you mentioned strategic plan. It's really a tool that we've needed for a long time, and I think that this is something we'll be able to use. It's not going to sit on a shelf. We'll really be able to use this and start to. I think it's one of the things, and we talk a lot about strategic plan, but comprehensive plan. But I think it's. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was this one of the things on our matrix of to-dos on that implementation matrix?
Excuse me. I'm sure it was, and because there were many aspects related to the housing, so it will certainly help us fulfill the intent of that. And I think when we look at this too, we have other plans that we need to cross-reference. The River Master Plan does have some housing aspects in it, so it's a good idea to share that and have them provide their thoughts on that. Just some of the thoughts, concepts, and strategies we've talked about in the North Salina area, which may also relate to west area of town and so forth. So we've got a lot of moving parts for this, and I agree. Sitting in on the interview, I agree with Gary that this group seems to really look at these things very strategically and look very closely, and what we'll have is something tailored for us and our needs in this community versus something that you might expect to see in every community.
Right, and I have read a few of the different assessments that particular group had put together, and they're very well done. So I really do think that we're onto something really good here. So
well, and actually, this isn't a bad cost for this if in fact they do cover all of these objectives and do a good job. Should be.
we believe it's on the low side of what we had anticipated, to tell you the truth. But RDG, as Mr. Blanchard has said, has put out some fabulous plans, and they were not the ones that called in and says, are you sure you really want to do this type of strategic engagement of the community, or do you really want to get these numbers put together, and do you really want to know what your housing assessment is? And we said, yes, we did. And this company did not ask for any of those to take anything out of our contract or agreement.
If I may add, not only was the housing study in the comprehensive plan, but the scope of the housing study was very much built out of other elements of the comprehensive plan, particular items that were in there. And frankly, staff was a little worried that it felt like we just kept piling on that scope. But RDG was very responsive to it.
Good.
They're really going to ride bikes?
Yes, actually.
Tell them to watch out for those Salina drivers.
Yeah. RDG is actually finishing up the Scenic Byways review, and one of the gentlemen that works for him, Marty Schukert, has ridden his bicycle through the 100% of the Scenic Byways in Kansas in the last 2 years. And so he did promise us that he would be riding his bicycle, and showed us actual pictures of it when they gave his presentation of him riding bikes.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, just obviously being out for walks and things like that, and it's obvious, you see so much more of your community when you slow down and you're out there, and I actually think it's a darn good approach to look at our housing.
We tried the drive-by assessment of houses with our, what we call our little mini assessment. We looked at about 12 different areas of a house or a structure or a building, and it just got too much for us to do on a drive-by, and so we started walking by and taking pictures, and we have several hours wrapped up in this assessment, but it's been quite eye-opening that we have potentially bringing back to you multiple structures for demolition yet this fall and winter.
It's amazing when you slow down and look. Yeah.
It is dangerous, to tell you the truth. No, it was a very good assessment. And we'd like to do more. We'd like to do some other quicker drive-by type assessments so we can know that this is a block we need to go back and look at. And I believe that this group will help us do those assessments.
It's a new realtor description. You know, they usually say not a drive-by. Some houses are, this is a drive-by. This is a definite drive-by. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, any other questions for staff? Okay, thanks. Any comments from the public on this?
Mayor, Commissioners, Dennis from the Chamber of Commerce. We applaud this step and encourage move forward, and thank city staff for their work. RDG's a firm I worked with before, and Marty Shugart, excellent person, as Gary talked about. I know the private sector stands willing and ready to be part of the solution to this. They need to hire the people that are going to live in these homes, and they have the resources that the public sector doesn't have in order to build housing and to move forward in the role of a developer or as a builder, et cetera, as this plan develops.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Des. Hey, how'd you think that coin toss turned out?
We'll talk about that later.
They won. You catch that? You guys catch that? Big Kansas Wesleyan victory after my coin toss. I thought it was great. Dennis was there. So nice deal. So really cool. The coin is like a real deal. It's like the real. I feel like I was at the Super Bowl. It's pretty cool. So, any other discussion? Anyone else from the public? No? Okay. We've got to keep this homey and friendly. Okay. I'd entertain a motion then.
I move we award the I move that we award the contract for consulting services for the Salina Housing and Strategic Plan. I should say that. To RDG Planning and Design.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second to authorize and award the contract of consulting services for the Salina Housing Assessment and Strategic Plan to RDG Planning and Design. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Great, thank you. Moves us on to other business. I think you had something you wanted.
I had a question. Yeah, we had last couple weeks someone that had an issue about our out of sight, out of mind sewer system, and I just had a question, and I was wondering if there may be a way to use this last experience perhaps as a learning experience for the city in general. What I was wondering about was, because people know very little about the sewer system, is that when we do something, whether it be reactive or proactive, that we communicate that with a local neighborhood so that people know what happened or what the city prevented from happening, perhaps. And I think that as we educate the public and the various neighborhoods about our sewer system, the more that we will understand what we can do to help the system as a whole as well. And I was glad that Ms. Tasker hung around, because I was wondering if this can actually happen. For instance, if there is an incident, does the city go to that location and, say, scope that part of the sewer to see what the offending, whatever it was, caused the problem?
I'll take a shot at that question. In an average year, we will get maybe 200 to 250 sewer backup calls any time of the day, and we respond to those. And I'm going to say maybe 10% of the less of the times we'll actually find that our public main is backed up. So we get the call from the plumber, homeowner, and we go there and we actually pop manholes, look and see if the sewer's flowing. If the sewer is not flowing and there is a sewer backup, then we will clean the line with our high-pressure jets and then run the camera in there to be able to take a look and see, what the cause of the problem is. And from that, there's a couple of situations. One, if the property owner does complete a claims form, then typically we'll get a request from our insurance company to provide a very detailed report of what we found, and from that standpoint, then we submit that data and they evaluate it from that point. We have data of our sewer system and backups that goes back to over 30 years, so we have maps that we can pull up and kind of pinpoint areas where we have had calls in the past and what those issues were, whether it was tree roots, grease, those types of things. So we keep a fairly extensive database. In some areas we have absolutely no issues, then out of the blue we'll have an issue there. Could be roots, could be grease, just about anything that someone can find a way to flush down the toilet we can end up with, from towels from hotels. And I'm not sure why high school kids find that entertaining, but they do flush towels and plug pumps and that type of thing. That's kind of a long answer. Does that get to the basics of your question?
It does. I was just wondering if there's some way to educate the entire neighborhood so that, you know, it may not be the person that had the problem, but someone else dumped a bunch of grease down the drain, and that caused the problem. And you could say, okay, this is what we found, and all of a sudden the neighbor across the street goes, oops, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that.
Then they're calling the guy back there over to settle a neighborhood dispute, so probably not necessarily a good idea to get too specific with
rather
who caused what.
Yeah, and I know that you can't make very many people happy in this whole process, but I think people would appreciate knowing what's going on and why certain things happen the way they do, and you could say, well, this is the picture that we have of the root that went through the sewer pipe, and it caused this backup, and we did go ahead and remove it, and everything should be good. And also what we do is, and I'm not sure if you do this or not, but I would guess that there's a system to periodically check the sewer system just in general to make sure that everything is going smoothly.
We do have a TV program that we have in place. It doesn't go nearly as fast as I would like it to, and that's why you've seen we have some projects for outside companies coming to clean some of our systems. Some of the areas have not been cleaned, and they're really tough ones. The old combined sewers that used to include storm drainage really create some issues and a lot of volume. So we do have a TV program. We actually can show you a map that shows exactly every foot that we've TV'd. We have data of what year we TV'd that and what we found at that time. Thanks to the City Commission, we have some new software that gives us great pictures of any situation we want to look at, and it tags it to a footy, a specific foot from a manhole, and we can tie it right back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
It is, and it
Talk
will
about
give
a
you
lot
a
of.
headache
I thought
watching
Netflix
it.
was running out of shows to show.
Yeah,
Maybe they
I was
could.
gonna say,
Maybe
that's
they
some
could
reality
get this.
TV I don't need.
Yeah.
There's times when that would be a very true statement.
Ms. Tasker, I know when I bought my old commercial building on State Street, for instance, and this is just kind of a typical, person buys a building, has no idea. There was what they called a gravity drain in the basement. I still have no idea what it does. I just shoved a sump pump down there and figured if it backed up, hopefully it does that. Obviously, separate from the sewer system, is there a way to, can the public plug those? Are those good to have, bad to have? That's maybe just more of a personal question, but maybe it relates to some of this.
In the case, I'm trying to determine what you sound like you're describing is more of not a waste type disposal.
Right. Now, this is just like a siphon drain. If there was water in the basement, it went and...
Those typically are not to be discharged to the sanitary sewer. They should be discharged to daylight or some other location. In fact, it's by code wrong to discharge that into the sanitary sewer.
Should those be sealed? In my case, I think there's still an open hole. Maybe there's a sump pump down there, but should those be sealed?
Well, if it's functioning and collecting trapped water around your floor or your foundation, then I assume, do you have a pump that...
I installed a sump pump a few years ago, but I just didn't know if that was similar to what was happening here, if water was coming back into people's basements and up.
I think in the case that Commissioner Harding is speaking of, it's more in reference to a sewer backup, some type of a situation there, and typically at least that's what I'm making reference to. And the plumbers have the ability to run a camera in from the homeowner's side typically, and we can come down our city main and we can look exactly at, you know, that connection point between the city and the private main. Sometimes it's difficult for the plumber to get that last few feet because of the fittings and the bends in a service line. So we try to work together whenever they call us. We go out. They were amazed that we came on Saturdays and Sundays, but whenever the call comes, we go there.
Backflow, some sort of backflow prevention, or?
I'm sorry?
The remedy for that problem, is there a backflow prevention device or something?
The actual city code requires a backflow device. Years ago, it was a gate valve that you had to manually close. In today's world, it's more of a automatic type check valve that closes based on pressure.
Right.
But they have an opening in the top that does require maintenance because if something lodges under there, it cannot be a tight seal and you can still have backflow. But that's been in the city code for many, many years.
Those evil city codes.
So people that are in newer homes might not have the problem, and it may be in older homes.
They might have the old manual valve, and any valve that you do not maintain, open, close, or work with it, when you want it to close, it refuses to do so without you know, regular maintenance of that. So,
and do we have something, I know in the building services we have on the wall as you go in the door pamphlets on how to do things. Do we have anything there, or even online, that people can get, that they can access to maybe know what their options are in helping to prevent these?
and when we have calls, we typically will provide them information to KDHE. They have a pamphlet that defines whether it's stormwater or wastewater, what you might do to protect yourself and your property in that case. So there's a lot of information out there available, and we try to share that. Building Services has information.
Correct, and we have a staff member who specializes in mechanical and plumbing areas, and a lot of times we will send him out to help work with the homeowners or counsel them on the best way to maintain their system as well. So yes, we do help them as much as we can, but a handout with pictures is probably not the thing they want to see. So.
Right.
So we do, and if they would call with a situation, we would go out and try to help them through as much as we can. From actually, we've had them inside our TV truck to take a look and actually see what we can see with that, and that usually is something that's pretty helpful to them to understand. You know, we really can check every inch of that sewer should we need to or want to.
Yeah.
Commissioners, kind of coming back to Commissioner Hardy's thought on the education. This is a very good topic for a higher level of community education, and the reason is because there's a significant volume. There's a lot of information the public just doesn't know, doesn't understand. It's a bit of a technical issue. Quite honestly, when sewage, when you flush and it comes back, you're not going to be too happy regardless of the source. and quite honestly, if someone, one of your neighbors caused it, you probably will never know.
Right.
And it's not as if you can go and get them to fix it for you. So you're going to look to whomever can fix it. That'll be us. So it's really imperative that we continue to educate. And we do it in the kind of the response way. But as we start thinking about things that our community engagement specialists can help us with, or coordinator can help us with, that's a pretty good topic actually to pick off and play with for a while and see what the best options might be. Yeah. It's a really good one.
Well, we have a great vehicle we can work with too. We have the water bill. And just throw a flyer in there and say, just, you know, recently we've had these issues and this is what you can do to help keep them from happening.
We did try to do a little public education with the Salina Journal. They worked on an article about, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, that covered a lot of these topics. They talked to local plumber, they talked with us and homeowners, and just trying to educate them on that. We thought it would be a good topic for us, the city manager, to cover some of those topics. So we've kind of put something together when it's our turn again to submit something on that to try to help citizens. And as always, if they call because they think it's not flowing properly, we are more than glad to go take a look and try to help them at least define whether it's in our system or their system so that they know where to go from there. And plumbers have the capabilities of cameras now, which is really very helpful for the property owners to really see what's going on there. So a lot of good technology, making all of our jobs a little easier there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other business before we get to the other business? Okay.
Are you ready for this? I move to recess into executive session for 45 minutes to discuss confidential data relating to the financial affairs and trade secrets of a corporation for the reason that public discussion of the information would competitively disadvantage the corporation, and to discuss with legal counsel matters subject to the attorney-client privilege for the reason that public discussion of those matters would waive the privilege and adversely affect the city's interest in the matters, and reconvene
Why don't we take a
at
5-minute break and make it 6:45?
6:45.
Second.
Motion is second to convene into executive session for 45 minutes after a 5-minute break, and potentially reconvene at 6:45. Do we anticipate any business after this?
We do not.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are in executive session.
But Hadria's embracing another man. The site said it was non-family safe. Well, this week, Hadria